Miss Jannat, we are live. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I am Jannat Ahmed, HR head at WomenAscension, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to today's mentorship session titled as The Power of Authenticity. Participants, your presence here tonight reflects your commitment to personal growth and authentic leadership, and I'm very excited about the transformation journey we're about to embark on together. We are today privileged to have Ms. Miranda Rocca-Circelli, founder of Unpacking Leadership uh, and a transformational leadership coach with over 20 years of experience in leadership development and human potential work. Ms. Miranda has helped hundreds of professionals and organizations evolve into their most powerful and authentic expression through her unique approach, that integrates conscious leadership, emotional intelligence, spiritual awareness, and practical strategy. Tonight, Ms. Miranda will guide us through a comprehensive exploration of authenticity's transformative power. We'll delve into defining what authenticity truly means in today's world. We'll also explore the connection between authenticity, courage, and leadership, and also unpack the social, cultural pressures that often hinder genuine self-expression. You'll discover practical tools to embrace vulnerability while aligning with your personal values, understand how authenticity builds trust and derives impact, and be inspired by the stories of women leaders who lead with complete authenticity. I encourage you all to come with open heart and mind, ready to engage and discover new possibilities for your leadership journey. So, following Ms. Miranda's presentation, I'll open the floor for what I'm sure will be a rich and illuminating question and answer session. I encourage you all to write down or note down your questions throughout the session. So, please, everyone, join me in extending a warm and enthusiastic welcome to Ms. Miranda. Ms. Miranda, we are honored to have you with us, and we are ready to explore the transformative powers of authenticity with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And of course, thank you to Women Ascension for inviting me and for connecting with me. This is truly incredibly exciting. And thank you to each of you who've chosen to come out here tonight. And this is going to be an incredibly magical session. Well, it's going to be short, and I'm going to try to get as much as I can into this and leave space for us to have a dialogue. This is going to innately raise your energetic frequency. Just by being present today to the information, you will naturally start to vibrate energetically at a much higher frequency. And I'll explain all of that as we go through today. So today is really about getting to know a little bit about yourself and better understanding who it is you want to become in the world and who it is you are. And we're going to do this through better understanding of what being authentic truly means. And we're going to look at the science behind authenticity. So a little bit about, let's make sure that this is working here. Okay, so we'll just go through a little introduction about the program and about myself. And then I'll get into the power of authenticity. And then I'll provide you with some short information about a program that I'm offering, and we'll open it up to some Q&A so that I can do my best to answer any questions or anything that you're curious about. So a little bit about myself. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, and I've been developing training programs, corporate training, employee coaching, as well as curriculum for all different industries. And it wasn't until I had my own children, I have 3 beautiful children, that I started to question my own path. And so with the academic knowledge of developing curriculum, I used my pain for everyone's gain, in a sense, where I would dig out my traumas and my challenges, and I would work through them and create processes. And in that journey, I studied different methodologies from different practitioners. I read various religious texts. And the one thing I really started to understand is one of the main common purposes we all have as humans, and I love that WomenAscension embodies that, is that our true purpose is to ascend, is to raise our energetic frequency. And in doing so, we impress upon others. And that is the greatest impact we can have as humans, is to raise our energetic frequency and to impress that and influence others to do the same. And naturally, when you vibrate at a certain frequency, you start to impress upon others. And you know this because sometimes you can encounter someone and without any exchange of words, you can always sense where they're at. You know, sometimes you can sense if someone's in a good mood or if someone's in a bad mood and you're, oh, I don't want to talk to that person today because I could feel their vibes. And so energy is real and we can feel it. And today is about better understanding how you can show up in the world and truly embrace authenticity by better understanding emotional states. Because as we understand emotions and we understand the anatomy of emotions, we can start to connect with them. If you don't understand something, you can't integrate it. And so today we'll give you a little bit more information about the state of emotions and how we can energetically start to increase our vibration in this world that we live. So the one thing that I've realized that makes us all unique, and this is getting to the layers of authenticity, are our emotional states. Our emotions are truly what makes us unique. And if we're going to better understand authenticity, we're going to have to better understand emotions, because authenticity is an emotional state. So we're going to peel back some layers here. Now, to better understand our emotions, we're going to have to go a little bit deeper and understand energy. Because at the rudimentary level, everything is energy. And if we're going to, and emotions are simply a certain frequency that's being emitted, and it's energy. And so if we're going to understand energy, we have to understand that, and I'm sure everybody knows this, and I'm just going to give a little definition of what energy is. Energy is really, everything's made up of atoms, and nothing is static. Every atom is in a constant state of vibration, and anytime something is in a state of vibration or movement, it emits a frequency, it emits a wave, an energy wave that can be measured. And nowadays, we have the technology to measure the energetic frequency of just about everything. And so when atoms come together and form solid matter, such as myself, such as this computer, the floor I walk on, everything is composed of atoms that have come together that are all vibrating and in the state of motion, and those vibrations emit a frequency. And every time these atoms come together to build something, it's a different energetic footprint or fingerprint of sort. Everyone following me so far? So everything is composed of energy, including our emotional states. And when we're in a certain emotional state, we're giving off a certain energetic frequency. Again, everything has a fingerprint of sorts. So if you follow me up until now, everything is energy and everything vibrates. A lot of my work and methodology is based on the work of Dr. David D. Hawkins, and I recommend everyone look into his research and his work. And what he did with his team is they created what is called the map of consciousness. And this is an incredibly powerful tool, because the map of consciousness is a calibration of all the emotional states that humans experience. Because again, when you're in that energetic state, you're giving off a certain frequency, and each emotional state has a certain fingerprint that it leaves. So the way they were able to calibrate each emotional state, and this is a fascinating study with impeccable accuracy, what they would do is they would give participants an envelope filled with what they would tell them was vitamin C. So they would hook up individuals to machinery very similar to an EEG or an ECG, which detect the brainwave and the heart wave frequencies. So these machines they can show you the energetic frequency that your heart is beating at, because your heart is moving, right? So it's giving off a frequency, and the same as your brain. And we can do this with our muscles as well. And so they would connect participants to this device. And when they were connected to this device, what they found is that your body holds score, it keeps score. And what that means is the body knows truth and untruth. Whether you're consciously aware of the truth or the untruth, your body knows truth and untruth. It's a very objective tool. And so when the participants were hooked up to the machinery, and they gave them the envelope and they told them this envelope contains vitamin C, every single time the body would go weak, even though the participants believed that they were holding an envelope filled with something healthy. The body knew what was in the envelope, and what was in the envelope was sugar. And so the body responded to the truth and it went weak because it knew that the statement was untrue. And so what they found is when your body is in a state of truth, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, it gives off a certain energy frequency that vibrates very high and with strength. And when the body knows untruth, it goes very weak and it gives off a different energetic frequency. And so in using this process, they were able to calibrate the emotional states. And so what they came up with was the map of consciousness. And as a scientist, I like to know the science behind certain theories and certain aspects because it helps me to better understand. And when you can understand something, you can accept it. And once you accept something, you start to integrate it within your life. And so if we take a look at this map, we see, and what they discovered was that shame vibrates at the lowest frequency. And so shame is the lowest emotional state that a human being can feel and operate at. And please keep in mind that these are very tiny increments of energy. So this would be 20 to the power of 10 to the thousands of hertz. So these are teeny tiny increments of energy, still notable and still measurable, but these are teeny tiny. And while this energetic map is linear, and this is simply to kind of explain this to you. So if we take a look at shame, which vibrates at the lowest, and we move on to guilt. So as we ascend, as we raise our vibration, we literally ascend into the different emotional states. And again, this is something that we're not all conscious of at all times. However, it still occurs. And so you raise yourself from shame, and then we move into guilt, into apathy, into grief, into fear, desire, anger, and pride. Now, these are considered the lower paradigm emotional states because they vibrate at a lower level. Once we reach courage, we start to get to a beautiful place where we start to vibrate at a higher frequency. And now this is where the magic happens in our lives. When we start to vibrate in a state of courage and we start to ascend, we move into neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, and then we move into love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. And this is exciting because you can just feel, even in the language and in the vibration, that the higher paradigm naturally feels lighter and better. So now I know I showed this to you in a very linear representation, and that's just so you can have an understanding of the scale of emotions. Now, humans are very complicated, as we know, and we're kind of like onions. We have a lot of layers to us. And so to give you perspective of how our energetic footprint works is that in all our layers, we experience all the emotional states. So for example, in one relationship with one person, you may predominantly feel a state of anger. In a relationship with another person, you might predominantly be feeling in a state of joy. And so in every aspect of our life, whether it's interacting with our thoughts, with people, with experiences, with senses, every time we integrate with an experience or a person or a thing, we experience an emotional state. So for all those layers in our lives, and again, just like onions, we have so many layers, we vibrate at different frequencies in each of those layers. Now, if we were to take the sum total of all the energy frequencies in each of these layers, we would come up with what we call our aura, and that is the sum total energy frequency of all the layers, of all the pieces of us, of all our emotional states. And many of us are unaware of all the different emotional states in all the different layers. And that's why healing is a lifestyle, because you discover one emotion and then it leads to many others, and the process continues. And this is how we start to ascend. And I'll talk a little bit more about the process. So if we take all our layers and we take the sum total of all those different emotions, we get our sum total. Now we'll bring it back to the map of consciousness. Now to bring this in perspective, what they were able to calibrate is only 3% of the known humans that have ever walked this planet. And that includes the Jesus Christ, the Buddha, Gandhi, all the ascended masters that have come to our planet. There's only 3% that have ever been able to, as their sum total, as their aura, as their total energy field, vibrate above the threshold of unconditional love. And what that means is that in each of their layers, In each of their energies, in each of their experiences and integrations, they were able to heal those aspects so that all the layers in their onions could vibrate at the frequency of unconditional love. And that's a hard thing to do, and you're going to see more about that as we progress. Now, they say that about 80% of the world vibrates below the threshold of courage. And I know that sounds a little bit potentially negative. However, the way it works mathematically, because we're dealing with exponentials, is that for every one person that vibrates at a state of unconditional love, that equates to about 750,000 people who vibrate below the level of courage. And so that's the yin and yang and the balance of the world energetically, is that yes, in terms of quantifying the numbers, there are more people who vibrate at a lower frequency, and there are people who vibrate at a higher frequency. And what this does, oh, here, I'm just gonna mute. There we go. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Thank you. So for every person that vibrates at unconditional love as a sum total, they equate for so many people who vibrate at a lower frequency. And again, this isn't to say one person's better than the other. We are all on our journey of ascension to raise our vibrations, and everyone honorably is on their journey. This is to give you perspective of the power in raising your frequency and coming from the higher paradigm. Now, to take this a little bit further, because often we still don't fully integrate and understand the power of our emotional states. And again, remember, emotions are energy. So if we look at this diagram, what we can see, and this is a diagram of the impact of emotions on your body. And so when we look at certain emotional states and where the energy center, epicenter is in each of these diagrams, we see, for example, if we look at fear. Often people who are in a state of fear, and anxiety is a state of fear. It's a fear of the future, the fear of things that haven't even happened, and we all get caught there. We see that over time, if we continue to hold that fear and we don't release it, we see that it can start to create issues in the body. And often people, and through quantum health, we can correlate certain emotional states with certain illness and disease. And often people who have a lot of fear and anxiety tend to have a lot of stomach issues. They tend to have a lot of intestinal issues and gastro issues. And that's because if we look at the diagram of fear, we see where the energy is focused. And so for each of the emotional states, now when we look at things like neutrality and happiness, you see that the energy is very different. Now, again, over time, if we don't release the energy and we don't heal the energy, that energy stays in those organs, in those centers of the body, and they start to do damage. And often when we start to have physical symptoms, it means we haven't been listening to the energy and the emotional states inside of our bodies. And our emotions are a gift for us to better understand who we are and who we want to become. But again, you have to understand and connect with each emotional state to be able to say, I choose this emotion. If you don't integrate with it, you can't fully understand it and heal it. And we're going to do a little bit of that today. So this is again to show you the representation that this isn't just a theory. Emotions are energy. And if we don't properly heal them and release them, we can start to make ourselves ill. So let's bring it back to authenticity. And where does authenticity sit in all of this? So authenticity is considered an emotional state, and where it resides is within integrity and peace. So, and I'm going to bring back the map, but that's between 350 and 600 to the 10 to the power of thousands hertz. That's incredibly high. And so if we take a look of how we're going to get there, because I think that's the golden question. Everyone wants to know, how do we now get to authenticity? Okay, we know where it is on the map. How do we get there? And I love this quote from the late Carl Jung. Real liberation comes not from glossing over or repressing painful states of feeling, but only from experiencing them fully. Now, this is the unfortunate part and the great paradox of life, is that in order to release the lower energies, we're going to go to this diagram, you have to be willing to feel them in order to heal them. So you have to be willing to sit with your pain in order to release your pain. And again, it's a great paradox of life because we're told don't look at the pain, only be positive. But if we repress and suppress the lower energies, we cannot release them and we hold on to them. And again, they start to harness illness within us and disease. So if we look at this map again, we see that authenticity is quite high up on the emotional scale. And so in order to truly vibrate and ascend to authenticity, we have to be willing to sit with the lower emotional states. We have to be willing to sit and feel our shame. We have to be willing to sit and feel our guilt, to sit and feel our fear, to sit and feel our anger. And again, I know we've been taught and told to not feel your emotions. And the only way to heal them is you have to acknowledge them, you have to create space, and you have to be willing to feel them. And my clients always ask me, well, how do you do that? How do you sit with your emotions and feel them? You do just that. You invoke the emotion, you invoke the anger in a safe space, and you allow the anger to be felt by every cell of your body so that you can start to release it. And just by feeling those emotions and just by acknowledging them, you start to naturally release them and start to feel lightened. And I'm sure you can remember this if you've ever had a moment where you've had to cry and you cried so hard that after that cry, after that release, you feel like a new person. Because that release is truly a release and you're letting go of those feelings by healing and acknowledging them and doing it the right way. So because we have a little bit of time today, I'm going to quickly go through the different emotions and what they can look like for you. Because again, if you don't understand the emotion and you can't connect with it and integrate with it, you cannot learn how to consciously choose it. And if you can't consciously choose your emotional state, your emotions will run you versus you run your emotions. You're the one who's in charge, not your emotions. So let's take a quick look again, just to give you a little bit more insight and guidance on what each emotional state looks like. So we'll start with shame, which is again the lowest energetic frequency that a human can feel. So shame looks like there's something wrong with me. Shame is the feeling of not feeling worthy. And again, it is the lowest state. They call it the death of the soul because at this point, when you're in a state of unworthiness, you don't have much energy. You feel heavy, you feel immobilized, and you really have a hard time navigating. Guilt is that feeling of I've done something wrong. It's that feeling of punishment that you need to punish yourself or you need to be punished because you've done something wrong. Apathy is the feeling of nothing matters. It's the sense of feeling victimized by the world and feeling like you don't have any control over what's happening. Grief is the sense of I've lost something I love. It's when we see sadness and we hyper focus on sadness everywhere. When people say, oh, that's really sad, that's because they're holding on to grief and they see sadness. And grief is fundamental in understanding attachments and codependency. Because often when we become attached to things, we integrate them as part of us. And so when those experiences or those people leave us, we go through a great sense of loss because we felt that it was part of us. And just like the Buddha, the idea is to be one with yourself and unattached, not detached, because detachment is a coping mechanism. We want to be unattached to things so that we still have a connection to them and we know that we're in control and those things don't control us. Fear is the feeling of I might get hurt again or I might get hurt. And anxiety, again, is a fear, a state of fear of the future. So we start to generate ideas about, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? And we start to connect with that as though it's reality, even though it's completely false. It hasn't happened. And we start to connect with that sense of fear of the future. And it starts to immobilize us. Desire is, I want more than this. And it's important to have a desire in life. It's important to know what you want. The difference is when you get stuck in that cycle of wanting something and getting that immediate gratification and then wanting it and getting immediate gratification. Desire is about identifying what it is you want and learning a delayed gratification of knowing when it's meant to fall into place, it will do so. Addiction is born here because often we get, again, attached to certain conditions, certain people, certain substances, because we're caught in the state of desire and we're reveling in that state. We're just going in a circle. Now, anger is that state of this wasn't fair. And when we feel something's not fair, we tend to generate anger. I'm Italian. I come from a culture who are very passionate, and I always laugh and say, it's not passion, it's anger. We need to heal that anger so that it doesn't come out in our language and in our dialogue, because it's very different from passion. And anger it's a lot higher up on the emotional scale. As you can see, anger vibrates at 150. So when we compare anger to shame, for example, you have a lot more energy with anger. And so everything's relative. And if we look at this relatively, anger does vibrate higher than shame because you have energy. And you know that when you're angry, it's like you feel it in your body. You want to move. You want to just swing. You want to just get, active. And so when people get to a place of anger, they are vibrating in essence higher than shame because they've raised their vibration. And now they have all this energy. And the key with anger is to take that energy and, like an alchemist, heal it so that you can transcend that energy into goodness. Remember, one of the laws of physics, energy can't be created or destroyed. It's simply transformed from one form to another. And so as you start to explore these emotional states and the energy behind them, you start to become a true alchemist, and you start to heal and become in control of the energy, not just the emotions. And so as we move into pride, this is, I know better. I deserve that. I'm better than this. And often when we come out of anger, we get to a place of pride. For example, if there was an opportunity you wanted and you didn't get, you might find yourself angry that you didn't get this opportunity. And then as you feel your anger, you will notice that you rise into pride and you still get that sense of, I deserve this more than that person. I'm better than that. I know my stuff. And that's what pride is. Pride is when you need to defend yourself. Whenever you find yourself defending or you feel triggered to defend, that's your pride. That's your ego stepping forward and saying, I need to defend myself. And it is a higher vibration, again, in comparison to shame or guilt. It's still considered part of the lower paradigm because when you come from that lower paradigm, you're coming from ego. And that's what we call force. And nothing good comes out of the lower paradigm because when we come from a place of force, it's just that. You are intrusive, aggressive, and you're coming not from a place of love, but a place of ego. And we all know there's not much good that comes when we come from this place. So as we transcend, we then breach into courage. Courage is the first vibration that we start to actually feel wholesome and we start to raise ourselves up. And so if you think about yourself in an example, I'll use the example of if you wanted an opportunity and you didn't get it. You're angry and then you move into pride that you deserve it. But then as you heal that feeling of pride, you move into courage. And what courage looks like is, I'm willing to try. I've got this. I can do this. I'm going to try. I'm going to put myself out there. And the minute we get into courage, we naturally start to vibrate at a higher frequency. And you know that. Anytime you've stepped into courage, there's an energy to it. And you feel that. And it's motivating. And it feels good. Because this is now where we've bridged from coming from ego, where we're coming from our higher self. And this is the place of power. And this is where good happens. And we know that when we even look historically at different types of wars and leaders, those who come from a place of their higher self and a place of power will always do good. So when we start to feel courage and release courage, because again, it's important to not just release the lower emotions, to release the higher ones too, because again, we shouldn't be attached to these things, more in control and observant. And so we move into neutrality. And neutrality is like, I'm okay. I'm okay. We're okay. We're going to make it through this. And then we bridge into willingness. And willingness is that sense of, I'm open to grow. You know what? I'm open to new opportunities. I didn't get the one I wanted, and I'm open to this. So I'm going to put myself into the world, and I'm going to be open to receiving opportunities. Acceptance is I see myself clearly. And this is where forgiveness is born. Because if you can understand something, you can accept it more readily. And when you accept something, you start to forgive it. You start to create a space where forgiveness is innate. Because if you can understand, for example, if someone ever did you wrong or they came from a certain place, and let's say you've had a similar experience in life where you can say, you know what, I understand why that person acted that way. I acted that way the other day. I get it now. I understand it. I can accept this person and forgive them. And this is where we start to bridge into love. And so love is unconditional. It doesn't mean, well, if you do this for me, then you get love. Or I only love this person because they show up the way I want them to. Love is unconditional. It means we give and receive unconditionally in all circumstances with all people. And that's a hard thing to do, especially in the world we live in. Then we bridge into joy. And I'm sure you can think of a time where you felt that sense of joy, where you felt that sense of happiness. You feel weightless. You vibrate so high when you're in a state of joy that anything is possible here. And then we move into peace where everything is meant to be as it is. And everything, there's a stillness. And I'll be honest, I've only wholesomely got to that place a few times in my life where I felt that stillness. And it's a really challenging place to get to and to be wholesomely. Now, again, you might have layers in your life where you vibrate in lower areas, and then you might have other layers where you vibrate at higher levels. And that's what makes us human. The goal here is to just become aware of your emotions and how you're feeling, and when you're ready, to sit with those feelings. Because that is truly how we ascend. And so the main question I'd like to leave everybody with is truly, are you willing to feel your pain to truly become authentic? Because the only way to truly vibrate at authenticity, you have to be willing to feel your pain and sit with it in order to release it. Now, the beautiful part of this is that you get to decide where you go. No one else gets to decide for you, and no one else is in control. You are in control of your emotional states and your healing. And where you go with that is completely up to you. So thank you so much. I'm going to quickly just give you a quick little bit about my program, and then we can open it up to some wonderful Q&A. So I am offering a program called the Ascended Masters Leadership. This will be the second cohort that we are delivering. And this is a program that is going to, what you saw today is basically, excuse me, a fractal of what you will see. And so this is a 6-month program. It's quite intense. There's a lot of work involved, and it's really focused on people who are willing to do this kind of work. It's about digging deep within yourself and really doing the hardest work that exists. This is the hardest work you will ever do, is the work on yourself. So this program, you will develop conscious leadership skills. And so we're going to further explore emotional states. And you're going to build emotional intelligence for stronger relationships. You're going to learn how to shift your paradigm and step into your power. And this is all about identifying your old beliefs that are holding you to lower emotional states. And we go through a process where you start to identify those limiting beliefs that you've been carrying since you were a child. And we start to rewrite them. And you're also going to learn how to stand in your power by setting boundaries. Once you know who you are, you're going to need to protect that. And we're going to do that by learning how to set boundaries. This is a powerful course, and it is going to transform your life. If you loved today, this is going to be the next step, and it's incredibly powerful. It will literally ascend your life just by being present. Even if you decided to not participate in doing the work, just being present will have magical effects on you. So, excuse me, thank you again. If you're interested, you can scan the QR code. You can learn more about the program. You can learn more about me. And I would love to open this up to some questions. I'm excited to hear from everyone and just see how I could support you today while we have a little bit of time.
That was truly, truly, truly insightful. It's an eye opener, truly. For me, I just you have only touched the surface level of the topic. And I am right now, I feel empowered. Why? Because I have understood those points and I really want to integrate this in my life as well to know, you know, what you have said is truly amazing. And the way I perceive is that emotions are not, the signals from the internal world, but rather they are also, sometimes they are being a barrier to the logic or our productivity. And that sometimes hinder our values, our needs, our boundaries, and experiences. So to know them, to understand them, that's the only way forward for us to overcome those, to basically understand and to be aware of these emotions and what we. There's a concept in psychology as well. That's emotional intelligence, you know,
Yes.
and it's very similar to the level of consciousness that you have today explained. So it it is truly amazing to learn about it again from a different perspective, yet a similar one. But I truly enjoyed the presentation. Truly,
Thank you.
that's true.
And that's just it. Is as we start to understand our emotions, right, we can connect with them. And I'm going to answer one of the questions someone posed. Can authenticity sometimes backfire in leadership roles? If so, then how do we manage that risk? When you come from that higher place authentically, no harm could be done. And that's the difference with as we start to create conscious awareness, we can kind of look back and say and evaluate ourselves and say, hey, you know what, can I do different next time? And did I come from a place of authenticity? The minute there's anything beyond authenticity and where you're coming from, that's when sometimes things can happen. And often what happens is we are unconscious to what lies beneath. And it's through the practice of conscious awareness and connecting with each emotional state that we can become more conscious about our emotional states. But when you come from the higher paradigm, you can never do any harm. You only do good. And it is the law. And so again, the key is though, is to become so consciously aware that you can pinpoint where you need to dig a little bit more and do a little bit more growth and development and healing, and where you need to evolve more. And so that's the key. And often things go wrong and we question, well, I wanted this and this happened. And that's a great opportunity to look within and say, okay, where do I need to do some healing? Where is there misalignment? And at the end of the day, it all falls back under intention. Your energy will always go in the direction of your intention, and your intention will always be aligned with your emotional state. The key is to become aware of what your intention is and what your emotional state is, and to make sure that those are aligned. Often it's the misalignment where we think we're aligned with our intention, but there's so much subconsciousness. And Ms. Mahed, you mentioned it. It's really the tip of the iceberg. There's so much depth to us and so much we have to uncover to truly come from a place of authenticity. And when you know the formula, then you can start doing the work. And you will always come from a place of good. How do you, and this is a great, and thank you for that question. Here's another great question. How do you navigate moments of joy while still grieving? And that's a beautiful question because all our emotions are sacred. None are good or bad. They're all sacred and they're all there to guide us and teach us about who we are. And it's as, I don't want to say as simple as, because none of this is simple. This is actually probably the most complex work we'll ever do, yet it's supposed to be simple. We've just kind of fallen off that path. And so listening to yourself. If there's a day where you feel you need to navigate grief, then you sit with that grief and you honor it. And if there's a time and a day where you want to navigate joy and feel joy, then you feel it. No emotions are conflicting. It's literally a chance for you to acknowledge those emotional states and to sit with them. Because as you acknowledge each emotional state, because they are all valuable, equally valuable in teaching you about who you are, it's about creating a space and feeling them. I hope that kind of answered your question. I appreciate the
There is
comment too
one,
about the
yeah,
science. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. There is one more question, and it is that she's asking that I do my best do not go back and feel all the guilt, but it suddenly clicks. I can't always be positive. So I practice a lot to flush my past, and that too, I confronted my emotions at the every step.
That's beautiful. And it's just that is we were told, don't feel guilt, don't feel anger, don't feel this. But the problem is that it's energy. And if we don't feel it, it doesn't mean it's not inside of us. It means we're literally repressing and suppressing that energy. We're just not looking at it. It's there, but we're not looking at it. So it's a tough thing because, again, the world has told us to not feel. And the best thing you can do for yourself is to sit with that guilt. And I know it's uncomfortable, and I do it. And that's why it's so important for me to do the work I do on myself. Because, I just went through a few weeks of what I called the dark night of the soul, where I sat with my guilt. And it was ugly. It was painful. It was horrible. And what came out of that was a release. And that guilt now is no longer part of me. There may still be remnants, and I may still have to sit with my guilt from time to time, but in sitting with your guilt and acknowledging it. I always say emotions are kind of like, I have children, they're teenagers now, but when they were small, kids just want your attention. They just want to be loved. And your emotions are the same thing. They just want your attention. They just want you to acknowledge them. And we live in a world that tells us, don't look, don't acknowledge. So acknowledging your feelings and saying, I'm feeling guilty right now. I feel guilt. And allowing yourself to feel that guilt is the greatest gift you can give yourself. I know it's going to hurt while you're doing it, but the healing, it's like a wound that has to scab. There has to be a healing process. And so by feeling your guilt, you will release it and you will naturally start to transcend. Let's see, I don't want to miss these questions.
Truly, self-awareness takes you miles ahead of where you are at the moment. So, yes, there is another question that how easily am I able to make decisions that align with my true self? And what do my passions and talents say about that?
That's a beautiful question. And that's a question that only you can answer. Nobody can answer this for you, right? Because again, what you define as ease and what you define as challenging is up to you based on your experiences. And the truth is, once you start to do this work, it does become more easy to align with your true self, because when you vibrate and you come from the higher paradigm, you're naturally aligned with your higher self. You're naturally aligned with who you truly are meant to be. And so in that space, when you listen to yourself, you'll uncover what your passion and your talents are. No one else can tell you that. And if anyone else ever tries to tell you that, they're only projecting their own passion and talent. You have to discover that for yourself. And that's the greatest and most empowering thing you can do for yourself. Here's another question. How can we use emotional intelligence to create psychological safe work? Great question. So psychological safety is when we come from the higher paradigm. And so it's all about emotional intelligence. And as you better understand the emotional states, you start to understand what it means to create a psychological safe space. When we come, and I'm going to put it up on my screen actually, just give me 1 second. I'm going to go put this back up here, just so we have a reference point. When we come from the higher paradigm, when we come from above courage, we are always going to create a psychological safe space because, again, you're coming from your higher self. You're aligned with a higher paradigm. And you're coming from a place of true power is healthy. When you come from the lower paradigm, you're contributing to an unsafe psychological safe space, because anytime you're coming from desire, anger, pride, guilt, you are not creating a safe space for anybody, including yourself. And so again, the more you become intelligent with your emotional states, which is understanding, integrating, connecting, then you start to be able to consciously choose where and how you want to show up. And that's when you start to become the alchemist in creating your environment and creating that safe space for people. And so psychological safety is completely born out of emotional intelligence. And if you're not aware of your emotional states, then it's very hard to create a psychological safe space. You might think you are, but if you're unaware and unconscious to your emotional states and to yourself, you might be creating an unsafe space. So it's very important to study emotional intelligence and connect with the emotional states.
There are two individuals who have raised their hands. I think Ms. Tahmina, if you have any questions, please go ahead.
Thank you, Miss Jannat. Miss Miranda, I have a question. I don't know if it's question or something I want to ask, or I don't know what is it, but I'm really, really curious about these things. You know, Miss Miranda, when I like someone, when I dislike someone, even though when I miss someone, when I don't miss someone, it's like the same for the other side, and always I'm the right one. When I miss someone, it's like when I miss someone the whole day and I try to message them or try to call them that I miss you, let's talk or something, hang out. In 1 minute that I try to do that, that person the same time they message me that they remember and they are missing me. Or even though when I hate someone, they hate me back. I know that when someone hate me, that's the same thing from my side. But about the loving man one, it's not just about the 1% or 2%. It's the like for like when I'm with the whole like most of the people I'm talking, but in there some of the people are really really special for me, really special for me. And whenever I try to talk with them or miss them, they message me. But some of them that I like them or love them because they have much ego, but they don't talk to me. But I do. I don't know if this something from for everyone or just me. I don't know this.
Well, that's a
It's really
beautiful,
confusing.
yeah, no, it's a beautiful statement. Well, this is the thing, right? And we know this because through all the scriptures, in all the religious texts, even in ancient times, we are all connected. And so humans act as an antenna. Remember, everything is energy. And just like an antenna, right, you can send and receive messages. Energy is just that. And I mentioned earlier an example, you can walk in a room and there's a group of people. And before anyone says anything, you can usually gauge and you can feel the energy. And you can feel, oh, do I want to interact or do I want to stay back? Energy, and the thing is, we don't put enough attention on energy because we don't always see it, right? So when you're feeling that state and others are feeling in a similar state, you become aligned. And just like a radio frequency, when you're tuning it, I'm a little bit older, so back in the, we had the tuner, and you'd have to tune it to find the radio station. Well, all you're doing is matching a frequency to hear the music. And when you're in a certain emotional state, what you're doing is you're tuned into that feeling, to that radio station, and you can receive anyone and any energy that's aligned with that. And that's why it's so important to align ourselves with the higher energy frequencies, because then we become aligned with those who are vibrating at that frequency, and we bring into our lives the people who are vibrating at love, at happiness. And the same thing, like you said, when you're vibrating, you don't feel good about someone, you're in a state of anger, you tend to attract the people who are at that state of anger too, because again, you always attract, like attracts like. You'll attract the frequency that you're vibrating at. And that's why they say that the world is a beautiful reflection. If you want to learn about yourself and stay more objective and take things less personal, you can look at the people in the world as a reflection. Okay, well, today this person came into my life and they're a little angry. So maybe that's my cue to say, hey, maybe I got a little anger in me that I need to sit with and heal. And so it can become a beautiful classroom to teach you about where you're at and where you want to be. And it also lets you take things less personally because you realize this is all just meant to teach me about me. And so if someone comes into my life and they're super happy and that means, okay, maybe I'm vibrating at that level too. This is great. So use that as a tool to better understand where you're at and where you want to be at. And again, there's no good or bad. Even if you feel angry, that's a beautiful trigger to tell you that you have some healing to do with anger, and you need to acknowledge your anger and you need to sit with it. Then you'll release it, vibrate higher, and attract people who are vibrating at that frequency. Now, I know I make it sound simple. It's very complicated because it's hard to sit and feel. And this is what I'm encouraging everyone to do. Thank you for that question, that statement. There's a few more questions
Yes,
here.
Miranda, that was really, really good and powerful. Even though the one thing I cannot understand in the people that is, um, when someone is faking something, if they are faking they hate me or love me. I don't understand this at all. But I have some, when I have some the good side for them, I don't know if they are faking or not. This is really really like hard for me to understand that if they're faking or that's real. And this eat me, because I have so much trust issues. Because of that I cannot do it.
Well, that's the first thing, right? Is as you start to do this work, you start to trust yourself. And you probably know the truth because, again, if you can get to a place where you're more observant and objective to read the energy, then you'll be able to identify whether that energy feels good or not good. But the key is you have to learn to trust yourself, because if you don't trust how you're feeling, there's no way you'll be able to identify how other people are feeling, right? You can't, and I always believe you can only take people and understand people to the depths you're willing to understand yourself. And so and the key is here too, don't look outside yourself so much. Focus on how you feel, not how other people feel. Because often, again, everything's energy. And when we focus our energy on other people, we literally give our energy to them. That's your energy. Bring that energy back and focus on how you're feeling and decide how you want to feel. And don't worry about how other people are feeling, because we're all on our journeys. And you know that the higher you vibrate, the people that come into your life will match that vibration. So focus in on how you're feeling and start to sit with those feelings. And that might start to shift how you trust yourself, and you'll start to build trust in you. And that's the key, because if you don't trust yourself, you can't trust other people, right? Let's thank you for that. Let's see.
Thank you so
There's a
much,
There's
Miss
a
question
Miranda.
question.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
there's
one question.
yeah,
What
sure.
is one thing we can hold on to value ourselves when it feels like no one loves us, supports us, or is being genuine?
You have to sit with that feeling. You have to be willing to acknowledge that feeling of apathy, right? That you're a victim of the world. And you have to be willing to sit with that feeling and acknowledge it so that you can release it. You can't release a feeling if you're not willing to feel it. And again, I know it's the paradox of life. You have to be willing to feel the pain in order to heal it. And it doesn't feel good when you have to sit with that pain, but it's just like a physical wound. It hurts, right? And it has to go through a healing process. And sometimes while the wound is healing, it hurts. But you know that your body is going to heal that wound when you sit with it. So allow yourself to sit with those feelings so that you can acknowledge them, and sometimes just acknowledge it. This is how I'm feeling. I'm allowed to feel this way. Sometimes that's all you need. So you have to acknowledge the feelings, good or bad.
Miss Kanvi is asking that how suppressing emotions affects authenticity.
Um, Sorry, say that again.
Oh, she's asking how suppressing emotions affect authenticity.
Well, just kind of going back to the diagram right here. When you suppress your emotions, you're just denying them. They're still there. They're literally sitting inside of you. So the more you suppress by not paying attention and acknowledging, because that's what suppression is. You're not looking at it. You're not acknowledging it. You're not paying attention to it. You're ignoring it. If I ignore someone who's standing there, they're still standing there. I can ignore them, but they're still standing there, right? So your emotions are the same thing. You can ignore them. They're still there. And so until you acknowledge them and you sit with them, that's the only way you can release them. If you continue to suppress them, you will never get to the place where you truly are coming from a place of authenticity, because you have to be willing to release the feelings you're suppressing in order to literally ascend and become lighter and vibrate higher. If that helps.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that helps a lot. And that answers the question very wholesomely. Uh, I don't know if the question is appropriate to ask you, but I'm still going to ask the question.
Okay.
That what's the main reason of suicide rate increase? Why do you think that people take their own lives rather than living it?
I mean, that's a deep question, right? And I mean, I
Yeah,
don't have the answer, right? But what I can
true.
say is from all my studies, what I've learned is sometimes, and this is a tough one, right? Because I think many people have been there, and I've been there at times where I've questioned my own state of being. And I think often there's a rebirth that happens with humans. And sometimes I think we translate that into a physical death. And what's important is that you are going to be reborn spiritually so many times. And you have to, because as you feel the lower paradigm, which I know is heavy and it hurts, the only way to heal it is you have to sit with it. You have to build the courage to sit with those, not so good feelings and feel them so that you can release them. And when you do that, it's like you're reborn. It's like the suicide of the soul to be reborn in a beautiful new way. And I've personally done that. I don't know how many times. I mean, after having children, I remember I had to rebirth myself almost in a new way because I had to let go of old emotions in an old paradigm. I think that often, again, we translate things into a physical reality, but what if what we needed to do was heal the ego? And, they say the death of the ego so that we can then reborn into a higher paradigm where we're aligned with our higher selves. And so I wish this information can get out to more people, because sometimes I think as humans, when we think of suicide, we think of a physical death, but maybe we can start to think of that as a spiritual transition and transcendence into a new version of yourself, because you're capable of transcending, you're capable of becoming a new version. It is going to require some work. And again, this is the hardest work any human will ever do. And that's why most of us, 90% of the world, doesn't do this work, because it requires you to sit with your pain. And that's a tough thing to do. If you can do it, you will be reborn in beautiful ways. And I know that personally because I'm committed to doing this work as a lifestyle. I don't know if that helps answer that question, but.
Yeah, no, definitely it does. It does. There's one more question, that how can one begin to connect with emotional states when they're unaware of it?
Well, I mean, this is the work that I do, right? And it's sometimes we need support in how to identify certain emotional states. And that's the key. The better we can understand our emotions and we dissect them and we look at the anatomy and what each emotion means to us, that's when we can start to integrate and become more aware of our emotions. Because if I know what grief means, I'll go back to this slide here. If you can understand that grief, for example, is the sense of losing something you love, something that you feel belongs to you or is part of you, then we can start to better understand where that applies in different aspects of our life. And so now when things happen in my life and I'm triggered or there's situations, I can pinpoint the exact emotion that I'm feeling, which is great because then I'm in control, because I can say, okay, I'm feeling grief right now. I'm going to sit, I'm going to feel the sadness, I'm going to release the grief, and I know what's going to come next. I'm going to raise my vibration and move into fear. And I work through each emotional state methodically for each trigger that I have in my life. Now, this is an exhaustive process. It's not recommended for everyone because it's very intense. However, with the right support, you start to become aware of your emotional states. And that is the beautiful thing of working with a coach and working with me, is that I guide you through this process so you're not alone. Well, the goal, and again, it's not the best business model, I like to empower people. I like to teach people and give them the tools so that you don't need me. Because if you needed me, then that would mean I've created a codependency and now you're going to grieve the loss of me. And that's not the goal. The goal is to empower you so that you know you have the courage to go out there and to do this work yourself. So it's a beautiful model. And that's where you start, is with, I think, the education and the support in working with people like me to guide the process.
I found this process really helpful. I was able to understand my own situation and the way you were explaining them to us. So yeah, it's really effective, by the way. There's one more question, that how can we train ourselves to better recognize label our emotions accurately?
Again, just studying. It's like anything, right? And this is the study of yourself, which is so important. I mean, you're your greatest project. And if anyone's going to be in charge of this project, it might as well be you. You're your project, right? And so the more you start to connect with each emotional state and you feel it, and I recommend you get the map of consciousness and you literally think of a moment that you're triggered and you go through, starting from shame, and you feel each emotional state for that specific situation you're dealing with. And that's going to help you better understand how do you integrate the emotions and what they feel like. And just like any relationship, get to know the emotions, get to know what they feel like. Just because they're lower emotions doesn't mean that, again, we shouldn't be looking at them. They're there for a reason. You know, these are our God-given emotions, energies to help guide us in this world. And if you don't understand the emotions, it's going to be hard to navigate this world. So getting to know each of the emotions, use the map of consciousness. And again, I welcome everyone to register for my program because we go through all of this. And again, it transforms your life because this is the type of work that is, again, the hardest you will ever do. And it will be the most rewarding.
There was one more question that sometimes we express our anger by keeping silence in front of a really challenging situation just to bring our opponent to be.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, I understand what they're saying. Like just to kind of keep the peace, sometimes we suppress, right? And this is the thing is that if you're triggered, and I teach this in my programs, what's the most important part about a trigger? So when you're triggered, it usually means that one of the lower emotional states are being awakened in you. So sometimes, say you're dealing with someone and you're angry because they're triggering your anger. What often happens in this is just pay attention because obviously it's important for you to feel your emotions in a safe space, right? So often, you know, if I'm in a conference or I'm having a conversation with a colleague and I feel I'm getting angry, even with my kids, if I feel I'm getting angry, what I usually do is respectfully remove myself and I make note, okay, I was triggered today and I felt angry. And I take people through a process on how to identify that. And then when you get to a safe space and you're alone, feel that anger and release it. So it's really important not to feel not to express those emotions and be reactive, but to retract, to remove yourself, find a safe space, and then allow yourself to feel. And that's the key, right? Like you don't want to feel anger. I'm not telling you to feel anger in the moment. I'm telling you to pay attention, note that you're feeling angry, find a safe space, and then experience and feel that anger so that you can release it. If you don't feel it, it's like anything. If I stare at a pen on my desk, I can stare at it, but until I actually physically pick it up, then I'll be holding it. Until then, it's still going to sit on the desk, right? So emotions, you have to pick them up, you have to feel them, you have to look at them in order to integrate, if that helps at all. I like this comment. Every thought has a frequency. Absolutely, it does. And we can measure that, right? What does an EEG do? An EEG, it measures your brain. They connect electrodes to your brain and they can actually show you what your brain's doing on a screen, right? So we can capture energy just because we can't see it, like the air we breathe. You can't see it, but it's there or you wouldn't be alive, right? So energy is the same. You may not be able to see it. It can be calculated. But don't be fooled that just because you can't see it means it's not real. Energy and emotions is very real and very powerful.
Again, another question. I'm not sure if this is appropriate to ask you, but I'll still go ahead.
Yeah,
That
go ahead.
how do we cultivate authenticity in marriage?
I mean, that's a great question. And that is a tricky one because anytime you're in a relationship with someone, you know, it's hard because we're individuals, right? And so we're all evolving in our own rate and we're all interconnected. And I think, again, the best way to cultivate and practice authenticity is to embody it yourself. Lead by example. And the more you get to know yourself, the more depth you bring to that authenticity, right? The more layers of that onion you start to peel back, you get to the core. So the best way to practice anything and the best way to impress anything on the world, embody it, be authentic yourself, and you will naturally start to emanate that outside of yourself. And again, you know, if people are on your frequency, they'll vibrate with you. And if they're not, they won't vibrate with you. And that's a beautiful thing because that's where you get to decide who gets to integrate with you in your life. You get to say, oh, these people are vibrating with me. They're part of my group. These people are not vibrating with me, and that's okay. They're on their own journey, but I can't interact with them because it's not healing for me. And so be that which you know, Gandhi said it best, be the change you want to see in the world. If you want to experience more authenticity, be authentic.
I could relate that to my professional settings. There is person who I work with, and I do not vibrate there with their frequencies, and I do not wish to continue with them because again that will create problems for me. Um, Eventually, they will hinder me in performing to my best, and I do not want that because eventually they'll exhaust me. So yeah,
Healing
yeah,
is exhausting for sure. And the
yeah,
thing is in life is that, people say life is hard. Well, it can be hard, and it could be hard in a way where you're not in control, or it could be hard in a way where you are in control. And for me, I've chosen and I've experienced, both sides of the paradigm. I'd rather choose the hard. If life's going to be hard no matter what, I would rather you choose the hard of being in control of my emotional states, because then I'm the alchemist and I get to create my life instead of being a victim to the life happening to me. And so I've chosen the hard of doing this work because I know what comes out of it. It's transformational. You become a new version of yourself every time. And the people and the situations that start to come into your life as you evolve and ascend are aligned to that level. And I know I've experienced magical situations, people, opportunities because of that alignment. And now that I've seen that and experienced that, I would never choose, for me personally, the hard of just going through life without being in control. And I get it though. This is why 90% of the world doesn't do this. This is harder than becoming a doctor, a lawyer, anything. This is the hardest work. And I appreciate that comment because that is why most people don't do it. It is hard. It is the hardest thing you will ever do. And it's the most empowering thing you will ever do.
we I think we all really hope to be there at one point in life.
And
So
you will. You will. And each person is where they need to be, right? And that's the peace part and the acceptance. I think everybody's on this beautiful journey. And I think the more consciously aware we become of who we are and who we want to become, again, the more empowered we are and the more good we could do in this world. And this world needs more good to be done.
yes, there is one more question. I think you've talked a lot about this, but the question is that can you please suggest some effective techniques for managing overwhelming and conflicting feelings without suppressing them?
Yeah, absolutely. Just feel them. I know it
Yeah.
sounds simple, but the key is sit however you're feeling, even right now. If you had to choose one of the feelings on this table, let's say you were feeling fear right now, sit with the fear, feel it. And again, it's the biggest question my clients are like, well, how do I do it? And I said, well, you get into a safe space and you invoke the feeling of fear and you let it take over you. Feel the fear in a safe space, in a safe way. Feel it. Because again, the only way you can manage your emotions, you have to be willing to feel them. Again, I'm looking at this pen, right? If it's on my desk, I don't control the pen. I'm not touching it. But the minute I pick it up, well, now I'm in control of this pen. And emotions are just like that. The minute you look at them, you put them in your hand, you feel them, you're now in control. If you don't sit and feel your emotions, you will never have control over them. And what happens in those cases is we put the control onto others. We give the control to others. And that's not a good place to be. And I've been there. It's not a good place to be because then we are caught in a state of apathy of being a victim. And you have the power to be empowered. You just have to reach for it. And again, I know it's hard. I know it hurts. I know when I sit with guilt and shame, it hurts. And it's a painful process, but I know what comes out of it. And like everything, again, the paradox of life, you have to be willing to walk the depths of the valleys to really appreciate the view from the mountaintops. And you have to be willing to walk the path of pain in order to ascend. And we've seen this in religious texts. We've seen this through time, through history. It is the path of humans. And we've been misled many times to go off that path. You are so powerful, each and every one of you. And it's really a matter of just connecting with that power and understanding your emotions so that you can be in control of your life.
You know, I would like to share my experience towards the end of the last year. Um, I was overwhelmed by this negative energy of, constantly failing to achieve something. It's not that I wasn't able to achieve, few things. And those were quite a major uh, turn of events where I succeeded. But, from the failures, the power of and the vibration of those emotions of those failures was too strong that they over overcame over it made me overlook at the things that I achieved that year. And similar to your session, I was able to take a session with Women Ascension towards in December last year. And there, I was that session was an eye opener. And then I was able to, where she said that you have to realize that not only there are things that are happening, those are the bad things happening, but at the same time, you are achieving small little things and take a notice of them as well. And from there on, I have been able to not look back at my failures. I have only been looking forward to my success. I do not sit back and now ponder upon that this is something, the situation has not per se changed till now. But there are other things that I look forward to. I have the platform of Women Ascension where I look forward to engage with people like you. This session has been really surprising for me, a very, very big eye opener for me. And I truly, truly, truly feel empowered from this session. So I just wanted to share that yeah, things are not
But it
easy.
is possible,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. It is possible. Yes, it is
Yeah,
possible. And the journey to realizing your emotions and then recognizing them and then sit with them, it's not an easy thing. It's been 6 months. I've recovered. I've recovered, but it took me time. So yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. That's
Well,
the lesson for all of us. Yeah.
I always compare it to, because it's so hard because again, physical wounds we see, right? And emotional wounds we don't see. They're deep inside of us. And often, I say when I'm going through this emotional healing that it's like I have a virus, right? And often, when you find yourself with a virus or the flu or a cold, your body has to go through a healing process. And often, you lay around, you sleep, you drink some soup, and you take care of yourself and you nurture yourself. And so anytime I'm going through an emotional healing, I tell myself, well, you have an emotional virus right now. You have an emotional flu. And you have to sit, you have to nurture your body, allow yourself to heal, create space to feel. If I need to sleep, if I need to eat, if I need to cry, and I allow myself the space and I tell myself that I need to heal from this emotional virus. Because if I don't tell myself that, then it's hard to take a concept and really integrate it. And so if I tell myself, well, no, you caught an emotional virus, now you have to heal it. And so I then allow and give myself permission to heal myself. And it's just kind of like a mind trick, right? Because it's hard to say, okay, well, I just took a week off sitting with my emotions. Like, no, but most people don't understand that. And we live in a world that society doesn't acknowledge that either. So often I do the same. I take the time, I sit with those feelings until I don't feel them anymore. And that's the beautiful thing. If you sit with your anger long enough, it goes away. And so often, I would never discredit therapy or counseling because I think there's value in every type of healing modality. The thing is that often therapy and counseling keeps you in a cycle of trying to identify how you're feeling and why you're feeling that. And the truth is that if you identify that you have anger inside of you and you sit with that anger, just like the juice from a lemon, if you take a lemon and you squeeze it, eventually there's no more juice left. And so if you sit with your anger in that moment, you will squeeze all the anger out and there won't be any anger left. There might be a whole other bowl of lemons and a whole other bowl of anger that you're going to have to deal with because there's so many layers. But I can assure you that when you sit with the feelings, you naturally release them and they don't exist anymore. So you don't even think about, well, why did this happen? Or how did this happen? You squeezed all the juice out of the lemon. You squeezed all the anger out. You don't even care anymore what happened because you don't vibrate with anger anymore. And so that's the beautiful thing when you can learn to sit with your emotional states you start to truly release them. And so the golden piece here is how you know you've healed, is that when you're in a situation that you would normally be in, where you would normally be triggered, if you find yourself no longer triggered in a situation that would normally trigger you, that's the celebration. That's how you know you're healed. Because often I find myself in situations and I'm confused because I'm usually triggered in these situations. So I'm why am I not triggered? And then that's that aha moment of, oh wow, I've healed that part of me. Okay, beautiful. That doesn't mean there's not another part that needs healing. It just means that that part has now been healed. And so that's the power in sitting with your emotions.
Yeah, I think that's the last question that we'll take for today, and it is that is it possible to be constantly on one particular frequency with emotion?
Absolutely. Now, that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And because we have so many layers, you can definitely hold onto a frequency for sure. And I mean, again, if we look at the great ascended masters, you know, if we look at Jesus Christ, if we look at Buddha, and God, they were able to sustain unconditional love and to operate at that frequency consistently. Mind you, if we look at their journeys, we know the work they did to get there. So it's not an easy thing, but it is doable. And I know for myself that I now operate at a certain emotional frequency in certain aspects of my life, in certain relationships, in certain layers. But just like a physical workout, you can't just do an emotional workout, get to your goal and say, okay, I'm good now. It's a lifestyle. And it's just like physically working out. You don't get to your ideal goal of what you want to weigh or what you want to look like, and then you never work out again. It has to be a lifestyle. And that's why this is hard. It is a commitment to yourself. And you deserve to make that commitment because you deserve to be in control of your life and the experiences you have. So it's, again, I will never say that this is easy. This is the hardest work you will ever do. And it is the most rewarding. And you owe this to yourself because this is why you're here, to ascend. And in doing so, you start to ascend with others and you start to influence and impress that energy upon the world. And that, again, remember, for every one person who vibrates at unconditional love, that equates mathematically, quantifiably, with 750,000 people who vibrate below the level of courage. That's how powerful you are. So keep that in mind when you can't see the energy. Feel it. You're electrifying. You're incredibly powerful. And women, I mean, we're exceptionally powerful, but we won't get into that conversation. But just know that what you do is so powerful. And this is your God-given right to be in control of that power.
Yes. I
Oh, I love
think
that quote
we
that
have.
someone shared.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yes. It is it is indeed under our control. We just need to reach out to it. We need to sit with it. We have to acknowledge it so that we can transform it to something that's beautiful, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing is, remember, you're in control. You're the alchemist, right? And just
Yeah.
like anything in life, it does take work. Absolutely. And it's remembering about who we were meant to be, right? And we were all born into this world with all this power, all this greatness. And sometimes the world obviously impressed upon us and shifted us, but that doesn't mean we don't still hold our power. And so as you do this work, you start to remember who you are and you start to experience the power that you hold. And it's
Yes.
a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful. So thank you, Miss Miranda.
You're
Um,
very welcome.
I would, as I conclude, today's, I would say, transformative session on this topic of power of authenticity. Having addressed all the questions, I want to formally extend my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of WomenAscension and from all the participants as well, because you have shared some profound insights, about emotions and authentic living. And your powerful message that authenticity is, fundamentally it is an emotional state, and that we must understand and integrate our emotions as energy to live authentically. It has given, I think, not only me, but all of us an invaluable, perspective that extend far beyond our professional lives into our relationship, personal well-being, and also overall life fulfillment. So, to all the
Absolutely.
participants, I encourage you to reflect on today's profound discussion, because consider how you might practice what Miss Miranda has shared you with you about emotional integration in your all the areas of life, whether they are relationship, family dynamics, personal challenges, and even daily interactions. So, Miss Miranda, your wisdom is about embracing emotions as a pathway to authenticity will resonate with, especially with me as I continue my journey. But I think it is going to be for all of us. It's going to be the same for all of us as well. As we move forward toward living, more aligned, truthful, and have impactful lives. So,
Okay.
everyone, thank you for today, Miss Miranda.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for today.
Thank you.
This is where I will conclude this session. Miss Miranda, if you have anything to say before we go.
I just want to thank everyone again,
Yeah.
just by being present today. You will all, I'm sure you can feel it. Your energy has naturally, again, because there's not just energy in the session, there's energy in the words, and there's energy in the emotion, right? So I hope you guys feel that. You feel that you've raised your vibration, and now you can go out in the world and experience that heightened awakening that you've experienced just by being present today. Because again, we're all interconnected. And when you become consciously aware of where you're vibrating, I know where I'm vibrating today, and I know that that energy is being impressed upon each and every one of you. And I know you can feel it. So I know the power of doing this hard work, and I encourage you to build the courage to do this hard work. And again, I will never tell you it's easy. It's the most painful and hard thing you will ever do, and it's the most rewarding thing you will ever do. So if you're going to choose a hard life, choose to be in control and choose to step in your power, because you are all very powerful. You just need to remember your power and do the work and step into who you are truly meant to be. And you are all wonderful people. So thank you for being part of today. Thank you for your participation. And I hope to work with each and every one of you again someday. So please do reach out and check out the program that we're offering. And again, thank you. I hope, I know you've all been impacted. So I can't wait to feel what you do with that energy in your world.
Definitely, I think I hope everyone has taken down their notes from today's session, because I really look forward to seeing you all continue this important work of authentic living even in our next collaborations. Okay. So, everyone, this concludes our today's mentorship session. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
You too, Miss Miranda. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.